I bought a ticket today. The composter punched yesterday. The bell rang for a stop I had not missed yet. I kept the ticket and the feeling, because both were small and polite. Entry 1, early spring, Monday, Ashford Street, near Cedar Lane Apartments. Trams on Ashford Street keep good habits. They arrive when tea cools. They leave when conversation remembers an errand. I like their manners. A bell sings 2 notes like a doorway half open. The conductor nods as if we are neighbors who borrow sugar only when it is raining. I do not expect variety from a timetable. Then I bought a ticket and watched the conductor feed it into the old green composter near the door. The handle came down with a click that sounded like a decision. The ticket slid back warm, punched cleanly at the corner with a little clover-shaped hole. Under the hole the date had been printed in neat ink that was not today. It read simply, late October. Early spring air fogged around my mouth while I held a ticket from a colder light. Machine is out of season, I said. The conductor, a calm woman with gray hair pinned without hurry, smiled. Validation is not a season, she said. It is a promise. She rang the bell twice, and we moved forward as if nothing had learned anything new. At Willowbrook Cafe, Tom Aldrich poured tea without sugar before I asked. You look like a man who has 2 calendars, he said. I have a ticket that believes in yesterday, I said. It is hard not to admire such loyalty. Tom lifted the corner of the ticket and whistled. Souvenir, he said, or a warning against rushing. I am not rushing, I said. We all rush, he said. Some of us walk while we do it. Entry 2, Tuesday evening, Route 17 toward the river. The route sign over the driver's head read 17. I enjoy that number. It sounds like a street that wears trees in every season. The trams with panels held the river's breath. The windows wore a little condensation like a mood. I bought a ticket with coins, the way the polite and the forgetful pay. The conductor pressed the handle. The clover hole bit the paper. The ink at the bottom said early winter, not this week, not this month. The more I watched, the more the tram did not mind carrying days out of order. A woman in a blue coat sat opposite me reading a grocery list with 2 items, cinnamon and cream. She looked up with the expression of someone who enjoys arguing with a friendly recipe. Does your ticket match your shoes? She asked, and when I laughed, she added, mine never does. I am Elena. I bake on 5 when the building asks me to. Daniel, I said. I buy tea without sugar because Tom insists it solves certain problems. Does it? It makes them warmer, I said. At the next stop a boy climbed aboard and asked if anyone had seen a glove he had not lost yet. The conductor said, tomorrow, as if that were a location, and the boy nodded, comforted by the existence of a timetable for finding. Entry 3, after midnight, without a date. Trams should sleep after midnight. This one chimed its bell like a whisper and waited at the corner of Ashford and Cedar Lane, as if the timetable had decided to be sensible only on paper. The sign read 17. The conductor's hat sat on the seat as if it were keeping a place for its owner while she fetched permission from the night. I stepped aboard and bought a ticket out of politeness. The composter took it like a bird accepting a thread and returned it with a hole and a stubborn date that read late summer. The air smelled like rain on old rails. I sat near the back where the floor hums like a patient conversation. We moved without a driver. Or perhaps we moved because the street remembered how to be a river. At River Bend, where the tracks swing close to the water, the tram stopped and nobody boarded and nobody left. The bell chimed once, like a correction. I thought of the grocery list with cinnamon and cream and wondered if Elena had baked because the tram reminded her that certain ingredients prefer last week. I held the ticket up to the light and watched the clover hole turn the street lamp into a small bright coin. Entry 4, Wednesday morning fog. I tested it properly. Bought a fresh ticket. Watched the handle. Listened for the punch that sounds like a soft refusal. The ticket came back stamped early spring 2 years ago. The conductor met my eye as if she knew I would need to speak. These dates, I said. They are not dates, she said. They are addresses. Yesterday lives nearby. Do I need to go there? You have already, she said kindly. You are only noticing the footprints. A man with a newspaper leaned over the aisle. Tickets used to have months on them, he said, as if we had invited history to sit with us. The ink ribbon remembers. That is all. But later, when I stepped off near Willowbrook, Tom had already placed a cup of tea on the counter with steam exactly shaped to my appetite. He looked surprised to see me go through the door and laughed. You were here a moment ago, he said. Then I must owe you a coin, I said. The me who is punctual forgets to pay. You paid, he said. He paid. We will sort it out. He tapped the bell that hangs near the register for no reason except to make a morning ring. It sounded like the tram's bell and like a spoon against a glass and like an apology that has already been accepted. Entry 5, Thursday, the collector's pocket. I kept the tickets. I am not a collector, but I became one by pocket and habit. The clover holes lined up when I held the stack to the light, and each stamp smiled an earlier smile than the last. Late October, early winter, late summer, early spring 2 years ago. The paper stacks smelled faintly of ink and windows. I met Anna Whitmore on board near the university stop. She wore round glasses and a name tag from a bookshop in Northwick. We have not met, she said, but you left a library card in our tomorrow tray. I sometimes leave things where they are likely to be found by a better version of me, I said. Good policy, she said. She glanced at my ticket. You are riding the yesterday tram. I am riding a tram that likes to argue with calendars. She smiled, a small, symmetrical expression. Calendars are suggestions printed with confidence. Anna pointed toward the composter. Listen after the punch. There is a second sound. I did as told. The handle came down. The hole blossomed. The first sound was the click of decision. The second was a soft paper sigh. It thinks, she said. It likes to know it has done right by someone. Entry 6, Friday, Willowbrook and a rumor. At Willowbrook Cafe, the chalkboard had 2 columns labeled today and yesterday. Under today, Tom had written 3 soups. Under yesterday, he had written 1 sentence. We sold the soup you wanted before you asked. He had drawn a small clover hole next to it, done with the corner of an eraser. It comforts people to see that yesterday has a menu, he said. David Blackwood, the superintendent at Cedar Lane, came in for coffee he likes to call a repair. The city retired these composters before I was born, he said, finger on the handle as if it might tell him a trick. They kept one here because tram riders clung to the ritual. Metal keeps the temperature of a habit longer than paper does. He looked at my pocket of tickets. Be careful, he said. If you carry too much yesterday at once, today mistakes your weight for ballast. Is that a mechanical warning? I asked. It is a neighborly one, he said, and left a handful of screws on the saucer the way other men leave coins. Entry 7, Saturday, the stop that is not there. I rode past my usual stop to where 17 crosses the old brick viaduct. The city under it speaks softly, the way a room does when someone has just hung a picture without a level. The tram slowed as if to listen to a suggestion. We stopped at a platform I had never seen. The sign read simply, last week. A boy stood on the platform with a paper bag whose grease had drawn maps. Is this the right tram for cheese rolls? He asked the conductor. Yesterday, she said. Second stop if you do not hesitate. I stepped off with the boy. We stood together while the tram's bell counted 2. The shelter smelled like rain and recipes. The boy's bag held no rolls yet, and the same degree of optimism people bring to markets. Will they be fresh? He asked. As fresh as your memory, the conductor said. Do not let it talk you out of hunger. We boarded again without leaving. Sometimes a stop is a word you say to yourself and not a place where your shoes can argue with pavement. Entry 8, Sunday, inversion at the river. I had assumed the composter stamps where I was not. I had assumed it lied politely to keep me company on long rides. On Sunday, the tram drifted along the river at the speed of warm conversation. The handle fell. The ticket came back with the inked words, early spring, which is where I stood, too. The clover winked. The bell chimed twice, then once and a half, like a stutter learning to be music. I think I am the one who is arriving yesterday, I said to the window. The conductor looked at me in the reflection. It is a common discovery, she said. I thought time was a track, I said. It is also a composter, she said. It asks if you will own the hole it makes. What is the second sound for? I asked. It is the paper agreeing, she said. When you cannot hear it, carry less. At Willowbrook, Tom had already written my name on a cup he had not yet rinsed. You will be back, he said, though I was there. He was not wrong. Entry 9, late Sunday, chalk on the door. Someone had chalked a small clover on the door to Cedar Lane. White on graphite paint. It looked like a mouth that knows how to keep a secret and cannot wait to tell it gently. A note in tidy block letters hung under the bell. Validate what you return. I sat on the steps and sorted my tickets into a ledger in my head. One for each hesitation I had carried. One for each forgiveness I had meant to give and had saved for a better afternoon. I wrote 2 apologies on paper and slid them under 2 doors. I wrote a recipe on a card and left it with the doorman, whose name I never remember because he changes it for fun. When I looked again, the chalk clover had 3 dots around it, like a constellation that refuses fame. Entry 10, Monday, Northwick by mistake. I boarded 17 in the morning to go nowhere in particular and arrived in Northwick by mistake in the excellent way that mistakes sometimes practice. Anna was at the counter of the bookshop, her glasses fogged from a kettle that had opinions. "The tomorrow tray is empty," she said. "Either the city has learned patience or you have." "Inversion," I said. "I am the late one. The tram is punctual. The composter is merciful." "Keep the mercy," she said. "Spend the punctuality." She handed me a small paper bag. Inside lay a hole punch shaped like a clover. "For your ledger," she said. "Do not abuse it." I punched a blank card and pretended it meant acceptance. It did not. It meant paper with a hole. I put the punch away. Rituals without routes are noise. Entry 11, Tuesday, tea without sugar and a rule. Rules arrived in threes all day, the way buses arrive when you write about trams. 1. If you carry yesterday, carry it lightly. 2. If you borrow a ride from the past, return a kindness to the present. 3. If you cannot hear the paper agree, stop and drink tea without sugar until you can. I practiced by letting a woman with a red umbrella board first. She was exactly late enough to hurt. The conductor met my eye and nodded as if I had paid with a better coin. Entry 12, Wednesday, the long ride to the depot. I stayed aboard to the end of the line, where the tracks curl into the depot like handwriting in a margin. The sign over the gate reads Ashford Yard in letters that remember a different century. Inside, trams rest like big cats. Mechanics clean numbers nobody sees. A clock on the wall ran slow by a minute and refused to be embarrassed. The conductor showed me the drawer where spare composters wait with bandaged handles. "They do not break," she said. "They get tired." On a workbench someone had written on tape, "Don't oil the hesitation." I asked if that was a joke. The conductor smiled. "If a door pauses, it might be letting someone decide. We give it 1 second of grace before we fix it." She pressed my ticket into a test composter. The hole landed exactly on the clover from yesterday. The paper agreed with a sound that felt like the beginning of rain. Entry 13, late Wednesday, a folded map. Back home, a folded map waited in my mailbox. No return address. The streets had my neighborhood's names printed with the care of someone who means them. Along the tram line 17, tiny clovers marked certain corners. Willowbrook Cafe, the chalk door at Cedar Lane, the place where the river bends, the stop called last week that may or may not be a word. In the margin a sentence, practice small returns. I spent the evening returning little things. I put a grocery cart back in the line instead of leaving it near the curb. I sent Tom a photo of the chalkboard from morning because he had forgotten to take one before it wore off the day. I wrote, "Thank you," on the back of a bus schedule and left it at the bench where people always borrow each other's pens. Entry 14, Thursday, a refusal that taught something. I punched a ticket and tried to use it on a bus. The driver shook his head in a way that looked like a gentle postponement. "Wrong ritual," he said. "Wrong metal." I stepped back and apologized for bringing the wrong grammar to his aisle. On the tram later, the conductor handed my unused ticket back and stamped a small word on it with a tiny separate tool I had not noticed. The word was returned. "For your ledger," she said. "It is brave to keep track of refusals without turning them into stories where you win." I kept the ticket and the word. I liked how they sat together without fighting. Entry 15, Friday, the person I almost was. Near the hospital, the tram paused longer than usual. A man stepped aboard carrying flowers that had decided to be on his side. He looked like a version of me that had learned to wear a hat. He glanced at my ticket. I glanced at his. Both were stamped early spring. Both had clovers that lined up if we held them to the same light. He nodded, surprised by the pleasure of being recognized without being drawn into a conversation. At his stop, he left the flowers on the seat, as if he had suddenly understood a different route. "For whoever needs yesterday," he said, and the bell chimed once, as if to sign a letter. Entry 16, Saturday, a small service. David asked if I could stand by the door while he adjusted the catch. "Hold it here," he said, "so nobody rushes into a problem." I held the door with my foot and counted breaths, a reasonable currency. A woman who was late in a way that made her kind rather than frantic smiled at me as she passed. "You have a ticket for this?" she asked. "Validated yesterday," I said. "Good," she said. "Yesterday is strict but fair." Entry 17, Sunday, the thing about mercy. Mercy in small forms is a skilled worker. It knows the hours and the tools. The composter's second sound, the paper agreeing, had been a whisper all week. On Sunday afternoon, it came back clearly when I bought a ticket for a ride I did not need just to keep someone company across 2 stops. "You did not need to do that," the woman said when she realized. "I did," I said. "For yesterday." And we both accepted the unembarrassing logic. Entry 18, Monday, a list of items not lost. I wrote a list and pinned it inside my coat. A word remembered after a week of looking around it. A door held for a person who will never see me again. A seat given to a person with tired ankles. A recipe returned to the envelope where it waits its turn. A laugh kept, then shared with Tom when the kettle sulked. These items have no price and a receipt printed in a language the composter likes. Entry 19, Wednesday, the conductor's break. I found the conductor sitting on the bench at River Bend without her hat, which made her look like a person rather than a role. "How many yesterdays do you carry?" I asked. "Enough to keep the seats warm," she said. "Not so many that my pockets tear." "Does the tram arrive yesterday, or do we?" "The track is a sentence," she said. "We supply the punctuation." She lifted the handle of a spare composter and let it fall without paper in it. The sound still had 2 parts. "It agrees with the possibility," she said. "That is enough some days." Entry 20, Thursday, a borrowed bell. The bell rope near the door is a cord with a memory for hands. I pulled it once on behalf of a man who looked like he had been arguing with a clock all morning. The bell chimed twice, and the tram decided to stop for him even though the plan had been otherwise. He mouthed "thank you" in the universal language of the almost late. The conductor stamped my ticket with "returned again," as if bells and tickets keep the same kind of ledger after all. Entry 21, Friday, a depot story. At Ashford Yard, a mechanic told me a story about the first week the city tried to replace the composters with silent sensors. People kept boarding with their hands in the wrong shape, looking for a handle to pull, a sound to match their intent. The complaints were not about fairness. They were about missing the second sound. After 3 days, the city put the green boxes back on the poles and called it user feedback. The mechanic called it mercy approved by committee. Entry 22, Saturday, chalk weather. Rain tried to wipe the chalk clover from the Cedar Lane door. I drew it again with a piece Marina Holloway keeps behind the pharmacy register for reasons she calls scraps of weather. "People need a forecast," she said. "White on graphite says later will be tidy." I added 3 dots again and left an arrow toward the tram stop that nobody would follow because arrows on doors are only for confidence, not directions. Entry 23, Sunday, a letter to myself. I wrote myself a letter and mailed it from the tiny post box near the depot, so it would spend a day being sorted by hands that sort with professional affection. "Dear Daniel," it began, which is a funny way to address a person you share a toothbrush holder with. "Validate what you return. Carry light. Listen for the second sound." I signed it in the calm of a person sitting on a warm bench watching a timetable practice mindfulness. When it arrived on Tuesday, I read it standing by the tram window and felt surprised as if I had received advice from a stranger who already knew my kitchen. Entry 24, Wednesday night, the last ride for now. The tram climbed the small hill near the university and paused under a row of lights that pretend to understand moonlight. I bought a ticket and held it longer than necessary because I wanted to hear the paper agree and I wanted to agree with it. The composter punched a clover and gave me early spring again. I laughed. "You have run out of yesterdays," I told it. "Or you have caught up," the conductor said. "Will it come again?" "Yesterday is a service," she said. "It runs even when you are walking." She rang the bell twice, then once, then twice again in a rhythm that felt like a good night in a language I almost remembered from childhood. I stepped off at Ashford Street. The door to Cedar Lane wore its chalk. The dots made their constellation. The air smelled like cinnamon and old rails in a city that agrees with people when it can. Closing. I keep the clover punch in a drawer and do not use it. I carry 1 ticket in my wallet that says returned. When I hear a bell in another part of town, I let it be a tram and not a metaphor. If you ever find yourself aboard 17 with a ticket that believes in yesterday, listen for the second sound and carry lightly. Time will keep your change if you let it. Tag. Yesterday returns change. Entry 25, early Thursday, the maintenance window. Cedar Lane woke early with elevator coughs and pipe whispers. I met David by the door with his toolbox and a patience that wore good boots. Trams have maintenance windows, he said. People should, too. I rode 17 with that idea. The conductor stamped my ticket with a clover and a faint mark I had not seen before, a tiny wrench beside the hole. You are allowed to slow the city, she said. Call it maintenance. I slowed the day by looking twice before crossing, once for cars, once for regrets. The paper agreed with a sound as clear as a teaspoon against a jar. Entry 26, Thursday noon, the clock that apologizes. At Willowbrook, a wall clock ran a minute behind on principle. Tom refused to fix it. It keeps certain promises, he said. It lets people be on time when they deserve it. I paid for tea with a ticket. Tom tapped it and shook his head. Wrong economy, he said, then slid a cinnamon roll across in a way that looked like a teacher grading in kindness. Return it to someone who needs a seat, he suggested. I did. A man with tired ankles sat gratefully, and stamped my smile returned with his own. Entry 27, Friday dawn, the depot bell. Dawn painted the depot in the color between gold and saffron, the one that tastes like toast. I stood under the yard bell and listened to mechanics tell jokes that kept machines humble. The conductor rang a test bell inside tram number 17 with a rhythm that spelled out a word I almost knew. It says almost, she translated. That is our favorite stop. Entry 28, Friday afternoon, the double route. A rare sign flipped above the driver, 17 and also 11. Shared rails, the conductor explained. 2 lines hold the same street for 3 stops. If you need to borrow a minute, this is where you do it. The composter punched a clover and, below it, a second mark shaped like a small door left ajar. You may re-enter a moment, she said. Use it to say what you almost said. I used it to tell Marina that the syrup she had mixed saved a night. She nodded in the exact middle between pride and relief. Return the bottle, she said. But keep the sleep. Entry 29, Saturday, chalk tide. Rain again tried to erase the clover on Cedar Lane's door. I redrew it larger and added a line beneath. Validate what you return, even if it is only a breath. Elena came by with flour on her sleeve and added 3 dots that looked like a necklace. A forecast, she said. Light weather for apologies. Entry 30, late Saturday, the last week market. At the temporary market under the viaduct, a stall sold yesterday's fruit at a price that flattered attention. A boy from the cheese roll stop recognized me. You came back, he said, as if we had made a pact. I bought 2 rolls and left one on the bench with a note. For whoever missed a stop by being kind. Entry 31, Sunday morning, the paperweight. My wallet felt heavy with tickets and promises. I emptied it on the table and sorted. Some tickets said early winter. Some said late summer. A few said early spring in a handwriting that might have been mine. I kept one from each season and slid the others into an envelope marked for the ledger. The paper on the table made a quiet sea like thin weather. I listened until it agreed. Entry 32, Sunday night, the river rehearsal. The tram glided along the river, rehearsing moonlight with the street lamps. The bell chimed once for a person who would decide to board and then did not. The conductor looked down the car and caught my eye. Rehearsal counts, she said. Thank the practice, not only the performance. I thanked the quiet out loud. A woman smiled without turning her head. I suspect she was thanking it, too. Entry 33, Monday, the rule of middle doors. A sign near the middle door said do not lean and a sticker under it said unless you must. I leaned while the tram took a corner that wished to be a sentence. The conductor stamped returned on my ticket without taking it from me. You leaned at the right time, she said. You steadied a stranger by accident and on purpose. I looked. A child had braced against my coat to reach the bell rope. He rang twice, then looked guilty. It is fine, I said. We arrived somewhere kinder. Entry 34, Tuesday, Northwick again by design. I traveled to Northwick on purpose and asked Anna for a book about timetables that tell stories. She found a slim volume with a cracked spine. Inside, someone had penciled notes next to a chapter called Courtesy in Transit. One line underlined twice. A composter is a small public promise that paper will help people behave like neighbors. I copied the line onto a card and slid it into the tomorrow tray. The pencil felt like a key. Entry 35, Wednesday, early. Early is a shape, not a number. I woke before my alarm and watched the streetlight blink its practice blinks. The first tram of the day sounded like a yawn organized into metal. I bought a ticket and the composter stamped early spring in a font that looked rested. You are aligned, the conductor said, as if I were a wheel brought true. I carried that sentence longer than a receipt. It improved corners. Entry 36, Wednesday late, the seat that remembers. There is a seat near the back that remembers my weight better than other seats. When I sit there, the bell seems to ring less loudly. The conductor nodded toward it. It is good to have a chair that forgives, she said. Do not hide there forever. I moved forward and stood by the door. The city admired the choice with a breeze that smelled like the inside of a book. Entry 37, Thursday, practice in public. David posted a small sign in the lobby, practice in public. Beneath it he wrote 3 examples. Hold the door. Return a hello. Accept help without arguments. I practiced by letting a teenager explain a phone setting to me. He did it kindly and with a speed that showed off his hands. I thanked him without telling a story about how difficult phones used to be. He smiled as if I had stamped his day with returned. Entry 38, Friday, the conductor's name. I asked the conductor her name because I had decided that not knowing felt rude. She shook her head. Keep me as conductor, she said. It helps the story stay a service and not a person. Do you have a pocket for your own yesterdays? I asked. She tapped the green box. I let the composter keep mine, she said. It returns them kinder. Entry 39, Saturday, the temporary museum. Someone curated a tiny museum in the depot office. 3 shelves held objects with small cards, a bell rope, a paper timetable faded to polite beige, a retired composter with a handle wrapped in cloth. The card beneath the composter read, Agreements recorded here. Please do not polish the hesitation. I stood longer than polite and then longer than that, resting in the kind of understanding that does not need applause. Entry 40, Sunday, the line that vanishes. For 1 block the rails disappeared under new asphalt. The tram crossed the smoothness in faith and habit. Memory is a track even when you cannot see it, the conductor said. We follow the weight of our good routes. I kept my ticket in my fist until the paper warmed and softened enough to learn my hand. The whole looked like a small moon deciding to be helpful. Entry 41, Monday morning, the almost missed apology. I saw Marina on the platform and almost pretended not to. I was late in my ideas. I was early on my feet. I chose the latter. I was sharp last week, I said. I am sorry. She listened the way pharmacists do, measuring with steady eyes. Accepted, she said. Return it to yourself this afternoon. The conductor stamped my ticket with returned without touching the green box. The paper agreed, anyway. Entry 42, Monday evening, the shared map. A stranger unfolded a map at the back and sighed the sigh of a person who has run out of corners to smooth. I offered to hold one end. We traced a route with our fingers, not to a place, but to a pause. I can get off 1 stop earlier, he said. It will not fix anything, but it will soften something. We rang the bell together. 2 chimes. The tram approved with a small electrical smile through the floor. Entry 43, Tuesday, the small ceremony. I held a ceremony on the tram that nobody noticed. I took the clover punch from my drawer and left it in my pocket. I did not use it. Restraint was the ritual. When the conductor stamped my ticket, I whispered thank you for doing the work I almost wanted to pretend to do alone. The bell answered once, a gentle witness. Entry 44, Wednesday, the note to future writers. I wrote a note and slid it under the cushion of the seat that forgives. It read, if you are carrying yesterday, SIT. When you can hear the paper agree, stand. Return something small. I left a clover drawn in pencil at the corner because ink would have bragged. Entry 45, Thursday night, the soft depot. Night at the depot is an education. The trams breathe like animals that were asked to be buildings. A mechanic covered number 17 with a canvas sheet as tenderly as a blanket. The yard bell rang once, not to summon, but to say enough. The conductor locked the green box and rested her hand on it a second longer than required. We did not fix time today, she said. We carried it kindly. I walked home along Ashford Street with my wallet light and my feet learning a better grammar for corners. Entry 46, Friday, an address, not a date. A new stamp appeared under the clover, A tiny outline of a street corner, signed with 2 neat letters that might be mine. The conductor nodded. "You have learned to read the address," she said. "It is the corner where you will owe a hello." I went there at evening. An old neighbor stood with his bag of oranges pretending it was not heavy. We walked together to Cedar Lane and split the fruit like a small festival. Entry 47, Saturday, almost summer. The calendar said almost summer in a friendly typeface. The tram windows were open the customary 3 inches, which is the city's compromise between breeze and rules. The composter's second sound had grown easy to hear. I realized I had been listening for it the way one listens for a kettle, not to hurry it, but to be there when it asks. Elena pressed a warm paper bag into my hand at the door. Cinnamon and Cream had agreed to be friends again. "Validate what you return," she said, pointing at the chalk which had survived a week of weather by sheer stubbornness and good handwriting. Entry 48, Sunday, a borrowed yesterday. A tourist asked if this was 17, and I said yes, and felt the strange pride of a person who belongs to a schedule. He showed me a ticket punched last week in a different city. The clover was nearly the same shape. We compared holes like meteorologists. The conductor smiled. "Yesterday is a shared service," she said. "Validate locally." We did by making room near the door for a stroller and a tired father who looked grateful in 3 languages. Entry 49, Monday, the ledger totals. I opened the envelope marked for the ledger and counted. Not numbers. Stories in shorthand. A door held. A seat given. A laugh returned. An apology mailed. A map shared. A bell pulled for someone else. The totals did not add up because they were not supposed to. I wrote at the bottom, "Enough for today. See also tomorrow." Entry 50, Tuesday night, soft closing. The tram climbed the university hill under the lights that practice moonlight. I bought a ticket I did not need because sometimes ceremony helps the city fall asleep. The composter punched the clover and printed early spring as if it were pleased to be simple again. The paper agreed with a sound that returned me to my own pocket. "Will I miss it if yesterday stops arriving?" I asked. "You will not," the conductor said. "You will carry it. That is what tickets teach." I stepped off at Ashford Street. The door to Cedar Lane kept its chalk. The 3 dots waited like a constellation that prefers small audiences. The air smelled like cinnamon and rails and the sort of relief that belongs to people who have made reasonable decisions at ordinary speeds. Afterward, if you find this diary on a seat or in a pocket that is not yours, keep it for one ride and return it to a person who is counting breaths instead of minutes. Validate what you return. Carry light. Listen for the second sound.